D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5 The Game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. We hope you are having a wonderful start to your Thursday. Willie Donick will join us shortly. He's in New Jersey with the Predators. They face off against the Devils tonight. Puck drop at 6, pregame at 5, right here on 102.5 The Game. So we've got you for the next 2 hours. Sportsnet's Elliotte Friedman will join us for his weekly chat at 4 instead of the usual 5. So looking forward to catching up with Elliotte as we do every Thursday. But Derek, we have finally heard from Robert Saleh. His introductory news conference ended about 20 to 25 minutes ago. He fielded questions for close to 40 minutes. And before we dive into what Robert Saleh said, I do want to give a quick shout out, if I may. I would like to give a shout out to Robert Saleh's wife. Let me make sure I have her name here. Where is it? Sana Saleh. Rolls off the tongue. I'd like to give a shout out to Sana Saleh, the mother of 8 children. 8. Good for you.
She got them all together. They were looking good in their two-tone
6
blue.
sons, 2 daughters. They're a couple of children short for being able to go head-to-head with the Rivers family for football family supremacy. You can field almost an entire football team with the Saleh family. So shout out to Sana Saleh, 8 children. That's great. That's great. It's my nightmare, but it's great for you. So let's talk about what Robert Saleh actually said during this news conference. Here's one thing you will not hear on this program. Robert Saleh won the news conference. You will not be hearing any of that today. Not because he lost the news conference, but because I think it's trite. He won the news conference. How many coaches have lost the news conference? I'm not saying that there haven't been coaches who have lost the news conference, but mostly coaches win the news conference. So we're not going to sit here and say Robert Saleh won the news conference. Oh, by the way, Skylar on her text line says, here goes Adam talking about somebody's mom or wife, LOL. I'm not commenting on Sana Saleh's appearance. I'm just giving her a shout out for being the mother of 8 children.
Yes.
8 children. It's a gift. Children are a gift. They are
keeps giving.
They are our future. It's a gift. Anyway, so we're not going to sit here and say that Robert Saleh won the news conference, but we are going to talk about some of the things he talked about. We're going to try to figure out exactly what this Titans team is going to be, what it's going to look like with Robert Saleh at the helm. And let's start with the comment, David Janes, if you please. Let's start with the comment that Robert Saleh made off the top. He was asked, of course, what the identity of the Tennessee Titans under Robert Saleh is going to be. Here's what he had to say.
Robert, Jim White with TennesseeTitans.com. What do you want your team to look like on Sundays? What do you want them to be known for week in and week out?
Fast and violent, man. Play in and play out. We're going to play with speed. We're going to play confident. We're going to have some swag. Talk a little but I want them to show who they are, play in and play out. And like I said, the one thing that you'll notice is the speed at which we play and the violence at which we do it.
Fast and violent. Put it on a T-shirt, Derek Mason. By the way, I would love to meet the football coach who says, we're going to play slow and loving. Fast and violent. We're going to play with some swagger. We're going to talk some ish. That's what we are going to be. I'm sure there were a lot of Titans fans who were lapping that up. And again,
rightfully so.
Understandable. That's why Robert Saleh wins the news conference. Just kidding. I told you I wasn't going to do that. Here's the question I thought was the most interesting and elicited the most interesting response from Robert Saleh. So he answered a few questions about Brian Daboll, the new offensive coordinator. Some really interesting stuff from Saleh on his relationship with Daboll, how he's going to run the offense, all of those things. But there was a question from Paul Kaharski about what happens if, and I know that there are Titans fans out there who are wondering, what if Brian Daboll does so well with Cam Ward in year one that he's out the door this time next year because he's getting a head coaching job? Heaven forfend that Brian Daboll is only here for 1 year, which means that Cam Ward did great.
Mm-hmm.
But Paul Kaharski asked Robert Saleh, what's the plan? What's the plan? Because there were reports, I believe it was Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated, who reported that as part of his interview with the Titans, Saleh had a detailed plan for what happens if his offensive coordinator leaves. So here was Robert Saleh's answer. I thought this was perhaps the most interesting thing he said today.
I don't want to kick Brian out before he's in, but succession plans for successful offensive coordinators have been a thing here. And it's been reported that you presented one. If he has the success that you and the organization hope for here, what happens from there, and how do you plan for that in advance?
No, we're really excited about the staff that we've been able to assemble over the last week since we officially locked arms, if you will. But there's a plan. I think when you look at our staff, and obviously there's still some things that are fluid before we announce all of them to you, but we've got a tremendous mixture of experience and youth. We've got some young guys that'll be on the offensive staff that we feel are on the fast track to becoming coordinators. And like I said, for me, the succession plan comes from my seat in terms of what our plan is for each individual coach and how we develop them. You know, I've talked about it before. You know, the most cliche statement a coach can make is that it's our job to develop players. It's like, well, no kidding. Of course, that's our job, but who are the people developing the coaches who are asked to develop the players? You can have a coach in the Stone Age that's developing his player, but his player's never going to leave the Stone Age. So how are we keeping our coaches up to date, evolving, staying ahead of the game? So our players are constantly evolving and staying ahead of the game. So we have a program for that to make sure that our coaches are constantly evolving and pushing the envelope of what they're capable of, no different than we're going to ask our players to push the envelope of what they're capable of. So to go back to your original question, there's a plan in place. It'll kind of be revealed once we start showing off revealing our coaches. But it goes beyond the name of the coaches that are involved. It's going to go to the development that we expect them to have.
That was, to me, Derek, the most interesting thing Robert Saleh said over the course of his 40-ish minute news conference. Overall, your takeaways from Saleh's news conference, what stood out to you, and what did you make of his response to that specific question from Paul Kaharski?
First, address that, that question as far as, him and how he's, going to proceed moving forward. I think like you said, you don't want to say that he won the sort of press conference, but I think he came in assertive. I think he came in with a strong presence. I think he came in with a detailed plan on how he's going to operate, not just with the players, and particularly to what Paul asked about the coaches, and in particular, Daboll. He said what he said prior to that, I think, was really important.
About the development of coaches?
Yeah, he said, we always talk about the development of players, but who's developing the developers? There has to be a system in place. There has to be something in place where we're constantly trying to get better as a staff, because if we're not getting better, our players are not going to get better, or the franchise can't sustain success. Why do you think Alabama was such a great team for such a long time? Because it wasn't just about the players on the field. It was about the individuals that were coaching them, and how can we make them better? Because ultimately, they're going to get another job. They're like kids. You're going to raise them, and ultimately, the plan is to raise them in a way that they can be well off once they get out in the world, self-sufficient, and be able to run a family or a business or whatever the case may be. And that is how Coach Saban sustained success for so long. He was the architect, but he made sure that his coaches were being developed. So if one of them left, the next one steps up. I think that's what Saleh's talking about, is making sure that our young guys ain't just running around, being do boys. No, they're learning just as the guys in front of them are learning, and then they're teaching that to the players. So if Dabo does leave, the guy that's behind him is ready to go. So that is what I think. I think that's what really, for me, that whole answer is what really separated him from Callahan. And even him, I can't quite remember Vrabel's press conference.
I mean, it's been
I'm
a while.
sure, yeah, it's been a while. I'm sure it was similar to this, but I don't know if Vrabes talked about, and Dabes, you got Dabes and Vrabes, talked about the coaches being developed. Maybe he had, but to my knowledge, to my recollection, that was what was different about Saleh. Because I guarantee you, if you just put them both behind a green screen and didn't, change their voices, you wouldn't know who was who. You would think they were exact. You would think Saleh was Vrabel and Vrabel was Saleh, because their approach to the game is all about teaching and technique. The talent's gonna be there, but if I don't teach the technique and how to properly do things, his talent is gonna be diminished the minute people figure him out. That was what Vrabel was good at with older guys. He didn't do it so much because development of the roster wasn't there. I don't think he did it as much with the younger guys, maybe because he didn't have a true hand in it. But Saleh's the defensive coordinator. He's going to operate like that in situations, but he's going to be a guy that, each one of these phases of the team can come to him or he can come to them.
One texter on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHunted.com, says, I've heard Shanahan echo that exact statement. He's constantly having to replace his coordinators. Saleh crushed the press conference. He didn't just hit a home run. He hit a grand slam. I'm officially excited. Jeff says, when you say you're not going to say Saleh won the news conference, you are actually saying it by saying you're not saying it. You see what I'm saying? Jeff, that's too complicated. It's too complicated. My brain hurts.
You took me in too many circles, man. I'm dizzy now. That was good. It was funny, though.
I'm surprised I read that without tripping over my tongue. Jared from Spring Hill said, no way Vrabel is going to talk about talking bleep in a press conference. That's all Simmons and Moore did last year under Callahan, it sounded like.
I mean, Vrabel allowed those guys to be themselves. That's why for that period of time before everything started to go south, that's why those guys ran through a brick wall for him, because he allowed them to be themselves within the structure of what we're trying to run. If you start getting outside that structure of team, then that's when we're going to have a problem. But if you're doing your job, that's a part of football. That's a part of sports, talking trash. So bring it on.
Gator Tim on the text line says, Liam Cohen lost the news conference. Absolutely not. David, do you have it? I need to hear it. Once he finds it, I need to hear it. But Liam Cohen absolutely did not lose the news conference. He went in there after practicing Duval in the mirror all night long. He's got it. Let's hear it.
Duval.
That's right. Does that sound like someone who lost the news conference?
Well, kind of.
No. Look at what his team did
Exactly.
Very
Exactly. That was the spark that lit the Jacksonville Jaguars. Liam Cohen looking like a huge ass nerd in that news conference. So he did not lose the news conference, Tim. So some of the other news and notes from the news conference, and we'll continue to play clips from the news conference over the course of the show. We've heard this before, but Saleh said that he will call defensive plays for the Tennessee Titans. He felt like he wasn't as engaged as he wanted to be in New York because he wasn't calling the plays. He joked that he was the timeout and red flag guy on game day because he wasn't calling plays in New York. So Robert Saleh will be calling defensive plays for the Tennessee Titans. Mike Borgonzi was asked about Cam Ward's progress recovering from his shoulder injury. Cam Ward was in the audience for the news conference. Borgonzi didn't offer much insight, but said that he's doing well. He didn't want to put a specific timetable
You don't need
on
to.
Cam Ward's rehab, but he said he's quote unquote doing well. So those were some of the major news and notes from Saleh's news
I
conference.
think you know, just him how he explained, you know, how he expects to sort of, in a sense, govern the team or be the leader, not just of the team but of the organization, and not just I will be calling defensive plays because that makes me feel that's the bloodstream, that's my oxygen, calling plays because now I'm into it. But I'm also going to be aware of every phase on this team, and we're going to work together to make sure all of that works, seamlessly, especially on game day. So he didn't shy away from, the point that, hey, listen, I'm me calling plays. That's going to be the deal. That's my energy. That's my, that's what I need, to feel a part of the team or feel like I'm in a game. So you expect his players to offensively and defensively. And I think that's what he may have lost with the Jets that he then regained with the 49ers once again, is that you had a defense that was playing fast and aggressive, but your offense was. And then ultimately it all broke down and it all looked like trash. So he goes back to San Fran. And listen, I know he has no control over the offense and he's not the head coach, but that energy was matched by the offense, playing fast and fast, no breaks. That's what they were doing on offense. So they match one another. That's what they were doing on special teams. So all three phases match one another. All three phases fed off one another. When one phase was probably lacking, they fed off the other. So that's how you have to have a team that's going to be able to compete year in and year out, is that everybody sort of pulls for one another. Because if you don't have that, you have a fractured team.
615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Your thoughts on Robert Saleh's introductory news conference. Did he win the news conference? Y'all can say it. I'm not saying it. But your thoughts on what you heard from Robert Saleh. What did you like? What didn't you like? Let us know. 615-737-1025 will continue the conversation. Coming up next, we are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service.
Robert, you mentioned the amount of research you did on the Titans before you took the job. What were the questions that you were looking to get answers to before you were comfortable taking the job?
Yeah, it's about people. Just trying to figure out the people. Obviously first and foremost, Miss Amy. And from everything I've gathered, she's an unbelievable human, and the resources that she's put into this organization is like nothing I've ever seen before. She's, for lack of a better word, putting her money where her mouth is in terms of how much she loves this team, how much she loves this city, how much she loves the people in this organization. And, but starting with her and working on down to everybody within the building, it's been, like I said, the people here and the conversations I've had, just trying to figure out who's real, who's authentic, and who's not. Be hard pressed to find someone to say something bad about the people in this building.
That was Robert Saleh at his news conference, which ended within the past hour. And I heard that comment, Derek, about Amy Adams Strunk. By the way, one texter on our text line said, did the coward Amy make an appearance? Yes. Amy Adams Strunk was at the news conference. Of course, she didn't say anything, but she was there. But I heard that clip. She's an unbelievable human. She's putting her money where her mouth is. And I could just, if you could hear people's eyes roll, I heard collectively the Titans fan base's eyes roll to the back of their heads when I heard that clip, just because of the love-hate relationship, right now mostly hate relationship, that Titans fans have with Amy Adams Strunk.
There's not much love there right now.
No, but Robert Saleh, we want your reaction to his news conference. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Gunner says and asks, calling plays for Saleh on defense. Fine. That's fine. But his DC and position coaches have to be able to handle the D on the sideline so he can be involved in the offense as well. But how can he communicate to his offensive guys while he's making calls on D? That's Brian Daboll's job, right?
Yeah, that's Daboll's job. But just like any head coach that calls offensive plays, the good ones find a way to make it work. That's why he talked about, everything being connected, all three phases being connected, the team being connected, the coaching staff being connected, the building being connected, because there's a lot that goes on a football field on game day. And we all have to be on the same page in order to make this go the way we want it to go. Daboll is in control of the offense, but we do discuss the offense prior. We all discuss about, as a head coach, what I like. Okay, I like that. That's good. And being able to tailor that each and every week. As it is on the defense, the same thing you do. So having the job with the Jets probably, helped in a way where now he knows how to be more judicial in how he spreads himself across the team, whether it be, offense or special teams, besides his defensive responsibilities as the coordinator of this team. But I think he can, but time will tell, and that's where the relationship between he and Daboll, it has to be. Why do you think Kansas City is so good? Because that relationship with Andy Reid and Spagnuolo, that's a great relationship, at least from a like a game day relationship. They understand what each other's want. They know the moment of the game. So whether it be offense and I got the ball, I know what I need to do for the defense. And defense, when you're defending the ball, you know what you need to do for the offense. That's why those two guys work so well together. That's what they're trying to find here with Robert Saleh and Brian Daboll.
Of course, there were a lot of questions about Cam Ward, not just about his health, but what Robert Saleh's plan is for Cam Ward, how Brian Daboll factors in to all of this. Here was what Robert Saleh had to say about that plan for Cam Ward.
Can you walk us through a bit your plan for Cam Ward and how you and Brian expect to get the most out of him heading into his second year and into his career?
No, absolutely. Great question too. Cam, from everything that I've gathered, just all the discussions I've had throughout the building and throughout the league, comes with an elite work ethic, elite character, an elite person. And, when you look at his body of work as a rookie, a lot of these rookies, when they come in through the middle of OTAs. But so the biggest thing that we're going to work with Cam, just going all the way back to the beginning, we've gotten a whole off season to work with him, take him back to the very, very beginning, both on the field, off the field, the process at which, what it looks like to not only be a professional with regards to preparation in his body, but as a professional with regards to preparing from a game planning standpoint or a playbook standpoint. But, just talking with Dabes over the course of the last few weeks, he is the perfect man to match up with Cam and to maximize who he is. So again, we're really pumped to get to work with Cam and get him to where we all know he can be.
Derek, how would you decipher those comments from Saleh, taking Ward back to the very, very beginning, both on the field and off the field? How would you assess that? How would you decipher those comments?
It's like, and listen, it is what it is. The last coaching staff got fired. Why? Because they were not doing a good enough job developing this team. So, what I'm saying is, I'm looking at it from my prism, and which is my truth, is that whatever he learned last year, they want to scrap it. They just want to get rid of it. Now, there may be a few things in there, a couple, that they may want to redefine or retool a little bit, but I think their plan is to let's wipe it clean. The foundation is, but let's wipe everything else clean. Let's get rid of all of that stuff, and let's start from the first day he walks in this building. That's what we're starting. Or matter of fact, let's just start from the first day we meet him, how he approached the building, what he's doing outside the building. Those things matter, especially with your franchise guy. How he moves and how he operates outside of the building is just as important as what he does inside the building. So they want to take, and not to say that Cam's doing anything wrong. I'm not saying that, and I don't think they're insinuating that. But what they're saying is, we're not going to leave any stone unturned. We're going to make sure that we start at it's like a root canal. We're going to start at the root. We're going to get it out, pull it, do whatever we need to do, make it good again. And they think and they believe Dabo is that guy, and he can do it at a pace that I think the fan base is going to see immediately. That's what they believe. And that's what it sounded like to me. And again, it's hey, you got fired. Why? Because you couldn't develop the players and win games. So when you hear that, I know it may sound harsh, and I like Bo Hardigree. I thought maybe he was probably the one guy on offense that, outside of Luke Stocker, that should have been brought back definitely because of what he was able to do with Cam. But everything that was done didn't amount to, in their mind, process and development of their young franchise quarterback.
One texter says, I worry about concussions for Cam Ward under Brian Daboll. But in all seriousness, I think they are doing a great job on who they've brought in so far. Daboll will be a good fit for Ward, but if it's a good season, it will be a shame when he leaves. So yesterday, we had on Ted Wynn from The Athletic, and we talked about Daboll and how he has developed and worked with many quarterbacks who excel at scrambling. Josh Allen, Jackson Dart. Excel might be strong, but it's a strength of theirs. Josh Allen, Jackson Dart, even Daniel Jones. And we asked Ted Wynn about, should we expect more running from Cam Ward? How would you assess Cam Ward's scrambling ability? And Ted said that he didn't expect Brian Daboll to run Cam Ward the same way Jackson Dart did, or Daniel Jones did, or Josh Allen did. He's going to tailor the offense to Cam Ward's strengths. Ted Wynn said he doesn't think that scrambling is one of Cam Ward's strengths. It could become one, but at the moment, it's not. So I understand the texter's point,
Mhm.
because Jackson Dart went into concussion protocol countless times
Mhm.
during his rookie season with the New York Giants, but I'm not sure you need to be as concerned about that with Cam.
Yeah, but even with Josh Allen, there was some concerns, because of how physical, Josh was running the football when they called these design runs for the quarterback. There was even a worry, with Josh in regards to that. So this does seem to be sort of that option, that this offense, you know, makes you prepare for. Um, I just hope that, if Cam is, because some teams may just put him in a run situation just so they can get a hit on him, as the game continues to go on and eventually it wears down on him. But just talking to Cam and making sure, or, running plays, making sure it doesn't become, too much of our offense, because Cam's not built like Josh Allen. Cam's not built like Jackson Dart, meaning the stature. Both of those guys are 6'5", 240, somewhere around there. So, or 220. So he's not built like them. So he has to understand, and I know Dabo does, that you can't put him in those positions.
Jackson Dart is bigger than I thought. 6'2",
He's only
223
6'2".
pounds.
He's a big dude.
He is a
23.
big dude. Jonathan in East Nashville says, I can't get the picture of Brian Daboll in a pool smoking a cigar out of my head, and now he's our OC. Hashtag Hard Knocks. I have a vague recollection of what you're talking about. I'm not sure if I do. I'm not sure if I want to look this up, but here's a random question, and I'm curious for your answer, Derek, because I've wondered this too, random texter. I've never quite understood the whole Miss Amy thing. At first, I thought it was just a sign of respect, but it seems like anyone who's ever worked for her calls her that without fail. It almost seems like it's a requirement. Can you guys shed some light? I just find it somewhat bizarre. And texter, I kind of find it somewhat bizarre too, but your response, Derek.
I mean,
is it a Southern hospitality thing?
The whole Miss Amy?
Yes.
I think it's more of a Southern sort of hospitality toward, your elder. That's the way I look at it. I don't, when did she adopt the name Miss Amy? Because, when you're young, you tell your kids to call, grown-ups by their last name, Mr. or Mrs. And a lot of times that sort of persona becomes them. That moniker becomes that person, like Miss Amy. She probably was called by her children's kids Miss Amy, and they just kept calling her Miss Amy. So that's what it became, So I don't see, hey, if you want to call her Miss Amy, I guess call her. If you feel weird about calling her Miss Amy, I guess you could feel weird about it. I don't know. At first I did feel weird about it, because I'm thinking, like, I can't be too far behind her in age. I don't think. I may be. But even with that, I did feel kind of weird saying it at first. But then it just became, a term of
She's
respect.
70.
Yeah. So yeah, I am. I'm some years behind her.
Yes.
I thought
You're not that old, Derek.
I thought she was in like mid 60s. But I've coined it as just sort of, that's a part of her name. Instead of her first name, it's just her first name is Miss Amy. So it's just Miss Amy.
615-737-1025 will continue to take your reaction to Robert Saleh's news conference. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like. 615-737-1025. We'll take your reaction. Plus, as we look ahead to life with Robert Saleh as Titans head coach, I want to take a moment to look back. And no, I'm not talking about Mike Vrabel, because I saw a list today that made me feel better about something that happened with the Tennessee Titans. 615-737-1025. Hell, let's give away something, shall we? If you would like a pair of tickets to the Nashville Hoop Showdown, featuring the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Virginia Cavaliers on Saturday, February 14th at Bridgestone Arena, be caller number 3. 615-737-1025. Caller number 3 will win a pair of tickets to the Nashville Hoop Showdown featuring Ohio State and Virginia, Saturday, February 14th at Bridgestone Arena. Call now 615-737-1025. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025 The Game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Willie Donick expected to join us at the top of the hour, as is Elliotte Friedman, Sportsnet NHL insider. He is coming up in roughly 15 minutes. But we actually received a couple of texts
Yes.
in response to the text
Yes.
from the person asking about Miss Amy, quote unquote. One texter, Brian, says, personally, I have a problem with Miss Amy. You don't hear Jerry Jones get called Mr. Jerry. I don't know why it bothers me so much, but it has always done that. Another texter says, in regards to the Miss Amy texter, I think they call her that because it's a lot easier than calling her Amy Adams Strunk in full every time. It's just a lot easier and catchier. Famous/popular people get these nicknames when their names are a mouthful. That's all. People didn't want to call Odell Beckham Jr. by his whole name, so it's OBJ. Same idea.
I mean, you can just call her Amy.
That's what I thought.
I mean, you can just say Amy. You got to train yourself a little bit if you've gotten used to saying Miss Amy. But if you dread saying, putting Miss before the Amy, then just saying Amy is, I'm sure there are many people that call her Amy too. So, I guess it is what it is.
I think it might be just a Texas thing because, I mean, she
You
is
think?
from there. So, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe.
Perhaps.
Yeah. Well, now it's a Nashville thing. She's brought it here.
A lot of you have opinions on this. I'm
Wow.
genuinely surprised. So, hey, you learn something new every day. But
What makes people tick?
the Robert Saleh era is here. He had his news conference, his first news conference within the past hour. But I saw something today on ESPN.com that made me laugh. It was written by Bill Barnwell, and it was a ranking of every head coach hire since 2021. There are 37 coaches on this list.
Mhm.
And I was pleasantly surprised that Brian Callahan wasn't as far down the list as I thought when I clicked on the story. Again, there are 37 coaches on this list
Mhm.
of the best to worst coaching hires in the NFL of the past 5 years. Just skip past the fact that Mike Vrabel was number 4 by the Patriots on this list. So you're going to have to scroll down a little bit further than number 4. You have to get to number 28 to land on Brian Callahan. But I said, hey, 28 out of 37. That's better than I thought.
Yeah. I mean, it's still the bottom.
Well, let me tell you some of the coaches who were considered worse by Bill Barnwell.
Okay.
And man, it's not a good list. Aaron Glenn with the
Okay.
Jets.
He's still there.
3 consecutive Las Vegas Raiders coaches: Antonio Pierce, Pete Carroll, and Josh McDaniels.
Oh, wow.
Nathaniel Hackett in Denver, and the worst of the worst, number 37 of 37, Urban Meyer in Jacksonville.
Oh, wow. Yeah, those are some real doozies.
That's a pristine list right
Yeah,
there.
it's a very prestigious list that you don't want to be a part of.
No. But I saw 28 and I said, not bad.
I mean, listen, I don't know how it isn't bad. He got fired after a year and a half.
I mean, it's bad. My point is that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be on this list. I was thinking he would be at like 34 or 35. I didn't think he would be at 28. I'm giving him credit for not being as bad as I thought.
So instead of getting an F-, he just got an F.
Right.
Okay, I mean, I could take it.
I'm not
That's
saying,
better than walking in the house with an F-.
I'm not saying, hey, Brian Callahan actually did a good job as Titans head coach because of his place on this list. I'm just saying that when I clicked on it, I was expecting to have to go all the way to the bottom to see Brian Callahan. So when I landed on him at number 28 out of 37, I said, good for you, Brian Callahan. You're not the worst.
Well, yeah, I guess that is a sort of an award you don't want to be a part of.
A dubious distinction.
Yeah, as being the worst football hire.
And let's be real.
In the last what? It was
in the past 5 years.
5 years.
Urban Meyer.
That was a you know what show.
That was bad. He lasted 13
Man, gosh.
Can I just read to you some of
I
Bill
didn't think they would
Barnwell's?
ever get out of that mess.
This is some of what Bill Barnwell wrote about Urban Meyer. Quote, none of the other coaches on this list were accused of physically assaulting their players, which puts Meyer in a world of his own. Meyer feuded with his players and coaches, abandoned the team play to fly back to his bar in Ohio. It doesn't say what he did at that bar, but you might have seen the picture. Set first pick Trevor Lawrence's development back a year, signed Tim Tebow to play tight end, showed little familiarity with who he was even playing, who was even playing for his team. It was fired after just 13 games. Your high school coach might have done a better job.
Now you see, I think, why it's so difficult for him to get a job. Maybe he doesn't want a head coaching job. If I'm an owner, I would never. If your name even rhymes with Urban Meyer, I'm not hiring you. So maybe that's why he's still on television. And he does a great job on television on CBS. I believe that's what he does for college football. Does a great job.
He's on Fox, I think, yeah.
But coaching, that was a you know what show down there.
One texter, Caleb, says, behind Gerard Mayo, LOL, indeed. Mayo is 27. Callahan is 28.
I wonder what went on with that Mayo stuff, man, because it would almost seem like he was just hired until they can, hire Vrabel.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, did y'all really like invest in him outside of getting Drake May? But y'all got Drake May knowing that he wasn't going to be y'all coach the next following year unless he just had a season that no one expected. But they should do 30 for 30s on these things because that whole thing was weird. But the Patriots are known for weird things.
So here are the coaches in order behind Brian Callahan. So he's at 28 on this list of 37, ranking the head coaching hires of the past 5 years in the NFL. Bill Barnwell at ESPN.com. So Callahan's 28. Aaron Glenn with the Jets is 29. Antonio Pierce with the Raiders is 30. Pete Carroll with the Raiders is 31. Josh McDaniels with the Raiders is 32. Lovie Smith with the Texans is 33. David Culley with the Texans is 34. Nathaniel Hackett with the Broncos is 35. Frank Reich with the Panthers is 36. Urban Meyer with the Jaguars is 36.
I am putting Lovie Smith higher up for this reason.
Then Brian Callahan?
He's above. Yeah, he should be like in the 23 or something.
Okay.
You know why?
Why is that?
Because he bucked the system. They wanted him to lose, and he said, damn with y'all, I'm about winning.
He cost them the first pick in the draft.
And you know what?
Yep.
They end up getting their quarterback. So there you go. That's why I think he shouldn't be ranked that low.
I thought it was because you sort of look like him now with that beard.
No. Shush your mouth. No.
Can I read what Bill Barnwell wrote about Brian Callahan? Quote, it's not Callahan's fault that the Titans fired Mike Vrabel to hire the former Bengals assistant as their head coach, but that move looks like organizational incompetence with the benefit of hindsight. Hiring Callahan to develop the team's quarterback of the future made sense, especially given that he was bringing his father, legendary offensive line coach Bill Callahan, along for the ride. Callahan's offenses weren't able to consistently execute essential concepts, and the expensively assembled offensive line struggled to live up to expectations. Cam Ward flashed at times under Callahan, but when the second-year coach appeared to suggest that he didn't know or correctly apply the league's catch rule, it was going to be tough to retain the needed level of credibility. The Titans also fielded some of the worst special teams I've ever seen in 2024. The Titans fired Callahan after a 1-5 start in 2025, with the one win requiring the Cardinals to essentially hand Tennessee the game.
This is why, when you look at Robert Saleh compared to Brian Callahan, and you see the personalities are different. And this is one thing he did, Robert Saleh did say, and it should resonate with everyone. There was because he was a former play caller, and that personality, people watched him infuse it into, the players that he had. He was able to, because we know it's tried and true, because we know how to develop men. Now, listen, it didn't happen with the Jets, and the Jets was the dumpster fire and probably still is. But going back to San Francisco and knowing he still had that mojo, that he still could lead men, and that he did it from a place of being a defensive coordinator. And I think, and he said, there's a certain sort of thing that you get when you're a coordinator, you're calling plays, you're in it. It's like, it's the pulse, it's your oxygen. Brian Callahan never had that. There was never a responsibility of, oh crap, if I don't call this right, we're doomed. Like, I got it. Everybody's going to, thinking about it, he never had that responsibility because Taylor was the OC, Zach Taylor. So he never had that responsibility or the weight on his shoulders, because if he know the play was wrong, they weren't going to come to Callahan. They were going to go to Zach Taylor. Why? Because he's a play caller. So for that, the Titans should have thought, man, we may not need to hire this guy because he's never actually taken on the responsibility and the pressure of a coordinator on game day. And that is what Saleh has taken on. He understands it. He knows it. So he operates from that prism.
Shannon on our text line quickly says, "What about the great Wiz? LOL. I assume Ken Wisenhunt. He should be below the list." Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he
Wiz.
wasn't within
Well,
the
yeah,
past
well,
5 years,
yes.
but yeah, retroactively, yeah, he'd be pretty far down the list as well. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Coming up next, Sportsnet NHL insider Elliotte Friedman will join the program. Willie Donick will join the program as well. We'll get into the Predators. There's a lot of rumors swirling around in the NHL right now. We'll try to make sense of all of that with Elliotte Friedman coming up next. 615-737-1025. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. The Predators are back in action tonight at the New Jersey Devils. Puck drop at 6, pregame at 5 right here on 1025 The Game. So let's go to our phone line driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com, and welcome in our friend Elliotte Friedman, Sportsnet NHL insider, who is presented each week by Old National Bank. Get old. Hi, Elliotte. How are you?
I'm old. How are you guys?
We're doing well, trying to stay warm down here in frigid Nashville. So the Predators play the Devils tonight, but I want to ask you first about the Predators' previous opponent, the Boston Bruins, because I was thinking about something as I was watching the game between the teams the other night. Last season, the Bruins were big sellers at the trade deadline, shipping out Brad Marchand, Brandon Carlo, Charlie Coyle, others. How are they able to rebound so quickly this season after shedding so many top players? And what could the Predators perhaps learn from what the Bruins did last year as they approach the trade deadline?
Well, I think one of the things that happened last year was, number one, Jeremy Swayman, their goalie, was just coming off a brutal contract dispute. And he didn't show up until right around, it was during training camp, and he just never recovered. That was one of the big sources of their issues. It would be as if for the Predators, Adam, Saros had a contract dispute that dragged into training camp, and he was just never okay all year. And this year Swayman came back. He was focused. He was ready. And he's had a great year. That's one key thing. They had some bad injuries on the blue line. McAvoy and Lindholm, two of their best defensemen, got hurt. McAvoy didn't play again after being at the Four Nations where he got hurt, and that really took them down. And I think that those were a lot of the reasons that they had issues. And, I think guys had bad years. Like all of that stuff combined together. This year, Swayman focused on hockey. Zadorov has had a really good year after a really rocky first season. They're healthier. But I think one of the things that they also did, Adam, was that when they made trades last year, they got young players who were ready to play in the NHL. They didn't just get picks and prospects. And if you take a look at the depth of their roster, like they have players there like Fraser Minton, who they got from the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Marat Hustinov, who they got from Minnesota, who were maybe guys who weren't either in their previous team's lineups, maybe their previous team didn't think as highly of them, maybe they were squeezed out, but when they got traded there, they found roles. And they're players in Boston. Like, for example, I'll give you another example. They have a guy who was in the American Hockey League for Toronto named Alex Steves. He was a really good AHL player, but the Maple Leafs never really thought that he was a fit for them. And Boston signed him, and now he's playing a role for them as one of their forwards. They just signed a 2-year extension. And Adam, one of the things I really find in this league is that pro scouting really matters. Who is a guy who is not fitting in another organization who can fit in with you? Like, who are those guys? Who can you find that's not fitting in elsewhere? And suddenly he comes to your team and he becomes a factor. And that's one of the things that Boston did. They found guys.
Regarding young players who could fit in with other organizations, Elliotte, there is one player rumored to be available who could fit that criteria, and that's Shane Wright, the 22-year-old center from Seattle, the number 4 overall pick in 2022. Why is he seemingly on the outs in Seattle, and what could the Kraken want in a trade for Wright?
Well, I'll answer the second part first, Adam. They're looking to hit a home run. If they're trading him, they want to hit a home run. Seattle has never had a game breaker. They've never had an elite offensive player. But, for example, just for argument's sake, I think if Artemi Panarin was interested in the Kraken, and I don't believe he is, but I'm just putting it out there, that is the kind of player that I think Seattle would trade Shane Wright for. But they want an offensive player that makes a difference. They are looking to hit a home run there. That's what they're looking for. The thing about Wright is, he's like the third line center there at best. He is hitting he plays, 14, 15 minutes a night in his best nights most times. He had a game last week where he played 9. And I think, Adam, another thing we're learning about this league right now is the NHL was always the kind of everybody bends to the conformity of the team league, like guys who didn't really stuck out. And I'm not saying that Wright's a bad guy or he doesn't bend to the conformity of the team, but I do think that when young players now aren't happy with their situations, they're much quicker to act on it than they ever were in the NHL. Like we've had 3 players this year, Adam, terminate their contracts to go play other places for less money. Now, one of them who went to Montreal, he just got a new contract, so it worked out for him. But other players are doing this now. When players are not happy, they're speaking up and forcing their way out more than others or more than ever. And that's one thing that's happening with Wright.
Elliotte Friedman, Sportsnet NHL Insider, is with us. Elliotte, of course, we're paying attention specifically to the Western Conference wildcard race because that's where the Predators are in the standings. Which teams do you believe will start separating themselves from that pack? Utah appears to be doing so, but is there anybody else you think in that group, Anaheim, San Jose, LA, Seattle, that is primed to pull away?
I think the challenge that you guys have in your division is that you only have one route, right? Like nobody who's in like Utah and the other teams in your division, like if you want to count Chicago and all this, nobody's catching the top 3 teams. Colorado, Minnesota, Dallas, they're way, way, way too far. It's like I used to play when I was a kid, a video game called Pole Position. You weren't catching those teams in pole position. But in the Pacific, because those teams are lower in total points, the teams in that division will have 2 routes. They'll have the wild card and they'll have the division. I think Anaheim is going to make it. I think Utah is going to make it. Utah's played more games than, the Kings or the Sharks or yourselves or Seattle. I just like their team. I think they play fast. I like their goaltending. I like Anaheim and I like Utah. The rest of the teams, I would like to see if it's not going to be my adopted hometown of Nashville, Adam, I'm going to take San Jose. I'd like to see them make the playoffs. I'd like to see Celebrini make the playoffs. He's the best player on those 3 teams. I'd love to see him in big games. I think Anaheim gets in. I think Utah gets in. And I'll take the Sharks because I want to see Celebrini get in.
We're talking to Elliotte Friedman. Elliotte, greetings from New Jersey here as we look on from the Rock, as they like to call it. And I want to ask you about, you just talked about the West, so why don't you hit the East? Because as I look at the standings, for the first time in a good while, there is a little bit of separation.
There's separation.
Yeah. So you've got some teams that have fallen back by, 5 to 8 points, to where it might be a little tougher than it seemed a few weeks ago to catch a Montreal or a Boston teams that have a stranglehold on the wild card spots right now. So how do you think that affects the market as we look ahead?
I think the interesting one's going to be Washington. because I think Washington's in on Panarin, but it has to be with an expansion. Like if you look at Washington right now, they're 6 points out. They're actually closer to third place in their division than they are in the wild card. They're 8 out of the wild card. And I think Washington's a really good team, and I think they would look at Panarin with an extension. So that is one for me. Other than that, about Panarin with the Panthers, I think they're his number one choice. I think that's where he really wants to go. I just have no idea of how the Panthers can make that work. And then the other teams, it's just a matter of, do they become sellers or not? Do they hang on or do they sell? I mean, it's a nightmare. It's really tough for New Jersey. Like the team you're playing tonight, as disappointing as your start kind of was, like their season, they started 13-4-1, and they're in 15th place in the 16-team Eastern Conference. Like this is a really hard year for them. This is a year they were supposed to take a step. And I think that a lot of these teams have big decisions to make about whether or not they wave the white flag or they go for it.
Here's another one that I'm sure is hard for anybody to answer, but you would have really good perspective on this. You were just talking about sometimes, you got players that want to change the scenery. You've got other times where you get that right guy changing addresses and he fits really well in the next spot. You've got such a shortage of centers around right now. They sent Fedor Svechkov back down to Milwaukee, and I'm sure he's very disappointed for that to happen, but he just has not been super productive. And now you've got another guy in a mix of players that this happens to all teams, several players, even high round picks. They sort of hit a crossroads and you start to wonder how much longer they have in a particular spot. So that dynamic across the league, Elliotte, I think it's an interesting one to follow because some come out of it, they grow out of it, and then others don't.
You know what? I agree with that. You can look like there's players that were top picks that will never do it because they can't adjust to a different role. And you'll have other players that were high picks and they accept that, you know what, maybe my ceiling is not where I thought it was, but it is where I can find another role. Like I can be a third line winger instead of a top scorer. And they accept that they have a bit of a different role. And I think that, I'll give you an example of a guy on your team who I think about with that is McCarron. What McCarron was a first round pick and he was drafted by Montreal. And, he was a guy that people were wondering, when you're a first round pick and you're drafted by Montreal, people are expecting just enormous things from you. And I know he was the 25th overall pick. He's not necessarily a first rounder, and not like a guy who's in the top 5 or anything. But anytime you're taken in the first round by the Montreal Canadiens, people are like putting you on a pedestal. Like this is a star. This is a cornerstone. And it didn't work out for him in that way. But I watch McCarron play now and the role that he's accepted, and he's a player. Like if on a good team, like good teams need players like him, and he accepts it and he does it and he's carved out a role. And, like I listened to Barry the other day, and I know a lot of the focus is on guys like O'Reilly, and I understand that because they're the sexiest names. But I would bet you that he's got teams calling him about McCarron. What are you doing here with this guy? Because to win a Stanley Cup, you need guys like him and guys who are willing to do the role that he does. So, obviously, when we're talking about Nashville, you guys are wanting to hear about the big names. I would bet you that that's one guy that Trotz knows he can deal if he wants to. And he's probably thinking about it. Do I want to keep him, or am I getting something here that I like? I have to say, I'd probably bet you too, like another guy like that is Bunting. The Islanders traded for Palat the other day, Andre Palat from New Jersey, where you are. I think they poked around on your guy Bunting. And again, I think Bunting is a guy who can play a little higher in the lineup. He has, and he has with you. He's a pain in the butt, and I say that as a compliment. And I would bet that Barry's getting calls on him too.
It's a great thought, and I want to ask you specifically about that dilemma when it comes to centers, because it's so hard to find centers. As soon as you trade somebody like McCarron or even an Eric Halla, who's done a very nice job, could probably be a nice fit. He's been that guy for many teams before. He's one of the more well-traveled guys. So when you're looking at your pipeline and you don't have, maybe Brady Martin needs another year or two, things like that, how do you weigh the dilemma of trading a guy you know you could get some pretty good assets for, but as soon as you trade him, you got to look for somebody that's similar, and those guys are hard to find?
Well, I think one of the things would be for Trotz is, he's had, how long have you guys been looking for centers? So he's
forever.
Not going. It's a great point you make, Willie. He's not going to want to create himself another issue. I would say this. I think oftentimes it comes down to what is the player looking for in terms of an extension. It usually comes down to, does somebody force you to make a decision? Do you get an ask for an extension that you're like, we're not doing that? And then when you negotiate, you sit there and you say, you know what, we don't have a path to a deal here. So that's one. And the other is, okay, what do I think I can get for McCarron? Okay. And these teams, you have an analytics staff, and they'll tell you over the past couple years, this is what a comparable to McCarron was getting in a trade. So generally, you set that as the baseline, as in, let's just say, for argument's sake, it's a second-round pick. Let's just say that. Well, if we get a second-round pick for McCarron, we got to look at it. And then all of a sudden, if somebody says, you know what, I absolutely have to have this guy, I'm giving you a first, then all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're saying, you know what, we may not get an offer this good. So I think what it comes down to, Willie, if it's either the ask or in terms of salary or the trade return, does somebody force you to make a decision?
Elliotte, before we let you go, I am curious about Nazem Kadri, because as we talk about Ryan O'Reilly and what he could be worth on the trade market, if the Flames move on from Kadri, I think that could provide a blueprint of sorts for Barry Trotz. Now, I know that Kadri has more term on his contract. He's more expensive than Ryan O'Reilly, but they're roughly the same age. So I'm just curious what you're hearing about what it would take to pry Kadri out of Calgary.
I think it's a couple of things. Number one, the challenge I think for Nashville is the reason, Kadri likes Calgary per se. He played his 1,000th game this year, Adam, and he told people, they threw a big party for him after. They did a ceremony, as they always do. You guys just had it with Yossi, and they did a big party for him. And Kadri told them, I really appreciate what you guys did here for me. And as a matter of fact, I think as a result, it took longer for his willingness to be traded to get out because he was so appreciative. I think Calgary's always known that it could come to this. The thing is, they really think, they'll do it, Adam. They'll trade him. I think that it would cost a good young player or two, a draft pick. If you had a good prospect and a good young player, or two of a good prospect, a good young player, or a reasonably high draft pick, I think Calgary would do it. I think the problem for the Predators doing it is, if you can't convince him that you're going to be better, like a Stanley Cup contender, I don't know how happy he's going to be.
Elliotte Friedman has been our guest on D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick. He joins us every Thursday during hockey season, and he is presented by Old National Bank. Get old. Elliotte, great stuff as always. We'll catch up next week.
Where's D-Mace today? Is it like a post-Christmas vacation?
No,
No,
he's
I'm
here.
right here. I had a question for you.
What?
It wasn't really related. I guess it was related to hockey, in a sense, but
Yeah.
you know, I didn't know if you
Go ahead.
Well, here's my question. And Lou, I know you heard about the Bill Belichick snubbing
Yeah.
and everybody's
Yeah.
in uproar. Has that
Yeah.
because I don't know how hockey does their
Hall of Fame, yeah.
Hall of Fame and votings
Yeah.
and all that. Has there been a situation where everyone felt this person was a first ballot and they didn't get in? And was
Oh,
it
good
such an
question.
uproar like this?
The Belichick.
You know
question.
what? I'll give you. It's a great question, D-Mace, and I'll tell you the one that it's not exact,
Mhm.
but it is similar. So hockey has a committee, and there's 18 people on the committee. And I'll say this: there's like retired players. I think there's a couple media members there. There's a couple women on the panel. Like it's a qualified panel. The
Mhm.
people there are more than qualified to judge, as far as I'm concerned, who deserves to be in the Hall of Fame or not. But it's a secret ballot, and it's mysterious. And and the other thing too is it's not obvious. Like somebody on the panel has to nominate a person to go in the Hall of Fame, and then they have to vote in to accept him or her. And we don't even know oftentimes who gets nominated. So it's like things like this happen all the time. I remember the one that really upset a lot of people, Derek, was years ago. There was a coach by the name of Pat Burns, and he got sick. He had cancer, and there were people who wanted him to get in before he died, and he didn't. And then 4 years after he died in 2014, they put him in. And I remember that was one that really upset people. They were like, you were going to put him in. You knew you were going to put him in. How come you didn't do it while he was still alive? I remember that. That was one I remember people being as angry as I can remember.
Derek, next time
Yes.
throw something at me if you want
Hey,
to ask a
y'all were
question.
asking
That was
questions.
a,
Hey,
that
y'all
was a
had
good
the hockey
question.
questions. Y'all had the hockey questions. So
That was
I
a
let
good
y'all go.
question. Elliotte, thank you so much. We'll catch up next week.
All right, guys. Take care. Have a great week.
Yep, you too.
615-737-1025. Great stuff as always from our friend Elliotte Friedman. Your reaction, 615-737-1025. We'll also get Willie's opinion on what he heard from Robert Saleh today. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service.
All right, let's tell you about Loan Pronto. They right now want to let you know that they've got the lowest rates that they've had in a good long time, with APRs as low as 4.89%. So if you're stuck in a 6% loan or even something higher, you could drop your payment big time with a refi. So call Loan Pronto right now. Even if you're not sure, if you got stuck with that in the last few years, you're in a better spot. You're going to save money every month by calling Loan Pronto at 615-499-5780 or go to loanpronto.com. You can get a free instant home appraisal, no hard credit pull. You can close in as little as 2 weeks, maybe even skip the next 2 house payments. So you owe it to yourself. Make that phone call and see how much money you can save. You can even get some money out of your home's equity as well. Take that money and then pay off those high interest credit card bills or car loans that might be hurting your budget right here at the beginning of 2026. So once again, Loan Pronto, 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, APR for well-qualified buyers. NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
Been reported that this was the team that you circled that you wanted to be the head coach of. Obviously, there have been some tough times here the last couple of years. What was it about this team that you were willing to stake your coaching future on it?
Yeah, shamelessly, I probably did as much research on this organization and the people, the leadership committee in this organization than they probably did on me, and did a ton of research on everything I could in terms of from top all the way down. And what I found is that the people here are unbelievable. And getting a chance to meet everybody in person just was an affirmation to what I had already heard. I'm a firm believer that people win championships. And this organization is built to win a championship because of the people, from obviously Miss Amy all the way down. The people here are unbelievable. And So that first and foremost is what drew me close to this organization.
That was Robert Saleh at his introductory news conference earlier this afternoon. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Willie, Derek and I reacted to Robert Saleh's news conference in the first hour. You weren't a part of it, so I want to hear what your reaction is. What did you like from Robert Saleh's news conference?
I think he came across the way we thought that he would. And of course, we have to be wary about the quote winning the press conference.
Oh, that phrase has been banned on the program.
Good.
Yes,
It's been banned.
Yes.
I think that's a smart move. But I do think he exhibited the presence that you're hoping you were going to see, and that is what everybody seemed to be preaching about him. Is they were impressed with his ability to do that. It looks like he has the skill set to connect everybody in the building and just have that better leadership quality that maybe has been missing the last couple of years, right? Since they lost Mike Vrabel, who I don't know if he connected the whole building, but certainly Vrabel had the leadership skills that have been vacant the last couple of years. So I don't know. I like what I heard. I don't think it's good to overreact or over speculate, but I do feel like they have a really good sense of where they want to go from here. That there's a plan in place and they're ready to go for it. It seems like it's more sellable.
Victor from Nashville on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says, D-Mace makes a good point on calling plays and why Callahan didn't have the oomph and energy. He could call some plays to start some games, but wouldn't adjust throughout. Saleh has shown he can adjust and is willing to change the plan when things aren't working. And Willie, this stems from Robert Saleh. We've talked about this before, but Robert Saleh said today at the news conference, of course, that he is going to call defensive plays because if he feels it makes him more engaged in the game, he wishes he had done it in New York. He's going to do it here. And Derek made a really good point before we had Elliotte Friedman on, that's maybe why, or part of the reason why Brian Callahan failed here, because he hadn't had that experience of calling plays and feeling what it felt like to have, the outcome of a game hinge on what you're calling into the headset.
Yeah, I thought that was a noteworthy part of the press conference. Because it dawns on me, he hasn't done it as a head coach. And he was talking about when he wasn't doing it for the Jets, he felt like he wasn't as connected to the game. But there is that management side, that game management side that you have to be tuned into, or you have to have some really good people around you helping you tuned into that part. So hopefully that will fall on the line. But his credentials as a proven defensive coordinator, I think supersede everything. I think I'm glad that he's going to be calling the plays, and I'm going to believe that he'll be able to manage that part of it.
I brought up the situation that Kansas City has, Willie, with Spagnolia and Andy Reid, where Andy takes care of the play calling and he handles that, but he trusts in Spagnolia. Is it Spagnolia? Spagnolo to call his defense based upon what we're doing offensively. So we're sort of working together, because if I'm an offensive guy, I know what my defense is capable of doing, and I know how far I can push this, or I know certain times of the game where I may need to run the ball a little bit, get those guys a little breather. And on defensive side of the ball, then they know exactly from an offensive side what you want to do, what you want to think. So they're calling their defense sometimes based upon that.
I think that also makes sense with what they're doing. Can we use the Vrabel term complementary football? I think without saying it, that's what he was talking about.
Did we ban that phrase?
I
don't know if that's been banned, but I do want to give a shout out to Robert Saleh for basically saying the ball doesn't bounce your way.
Yes, he did say that.
He did use the word oblong to describe the football, which I liked. But when I heard that phrase, I was like, Rob, can I call you Rob, or is it Bob? Rob, Bob, what can I call you? Maybe don't make comments about the balls bouncing certain ways in Nashville. It's a touchy subject. But I don't think complimentary football has been banned on the program. But if you say it enough, it will be.
I think we might. But I think that will be key if you're going to do it that way, where you basically turn the reins over to Dayball for offense. And the other thing I thought jumped out to me was his description of Dayball's offense. And I'd never heard it put this way, where he was talking about the Shanahan family tree, which includes a lot of other subsets, dominates 80 to 90% of the league, he said. And so it's easier to prepare for those teams because you see so many of them, but Dayball doesn't come from that. So that maybe is a slight advantage going in. Time will tell.
It does sound like, Derek, to your point about Reed and Spagnuolo in Kansas City, that Brian Daboll is going to have full autonomy over the offense. Not that Robert Saleh won't have input on what goes on. He is the head coach after all. But it sounds like Brian Daboll is going to really be the offensive head coach versus just the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, because you never really see Andy and I know he's probably talking through the headphones, but you never really see him and Spags together. They're doing it's like two teams connected in one, meaning offense and the defense, and they work well together. So I don't have to oversee. Only thing I got to say is, hey, coach, we may be headed into 2 minutes. So, or 4 minute offense. We got to head into our 4 minute offense. So if, just make note of that. So the plays we're going to call, we're going to slow the game down for you, try to, milk the clock. And so now the defense understands what he's doing, and they can base their calls if indeed, you don't waste a whole 4 minutes. They could make their calls based upon that, knowing that they may have, to sort of, defend a minute on a clock. So that's complimentary. I said it again. So that's twice in one show, or maybe 3 times. But that is that type of football that I think Kansas City does it well. And that's where the Titans hope to get to.
Here's a ringing endorsement of Robert Saleh from our friend Paul Kaharski. Quote, Robert Saleh was terrific in an informal lunch setting at his introductory press conference and a spillover with print media. Commanding, informative, confident, going to be an excellent face of the franchise. It will all come down, of course, to whether he and his staff can develop players and winning plans with people Mike Morganzi and the scouting staff deliver him with input. Also, happy birthday, Paul Kaharski. I just saw that. It's your birthday. Happy birthday,
Happy birthday, Paul.
That sounds like somebody who thought Robert Saleh won the news conference.
Paul got a nice birthday present, huh?
You just used the band phrase.
Saleh gave, and then Saleh called him by his name. He was like, Paul, right?
Yes.
So there you go.
A little personal touch as well. 615-737-1025. Oh, before I forget, one programming note. Earlier today, the SEC announced that Saturday's game between Vanderbilt men's basketball and Ole Miss will now take place at Memorial Gym. It was supposed to take place in Oxford this weekend, but the teams have flipped their home and home, so they will play here at 5 o'clock. Derek, you told me that Ole Miss
it's bad.
It's bad right now with the weather and stuff.
They may have because I guess it sounds so small. They may have gotten hit worse than we did, at least in that area. So I know a lot of things are out down there.
So the game between Vanderbilt and Ole Miss will now take place here at Memorial Gym, 5 p.m. Saturday. All season single game and mini plan tickets previously purchased for the game on March 4th will be valid on Saturday in case you have tickets for the game. 615-737-1025 will continue to take your reaction to Robert Saleh's new news conference. Plus, the big story in the NFL the past couple of days, Bill Belichick, not a first ballot Hall of Famer. We have heard from one Hall of Fame voter who explained why he didn't vote for Bill Belichick. We'll bring that to you next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025 The Game. D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5 The Game. Predators pregame coming up at the top of the hour. Predators versus Devils tonight in Newark, New Jersey. Puck drop at 6, as I just said. Pregame at 5. As always, right here on 102.5 The Game. And Derek, I just want to say I'm pretty excited about something. So every Friday on the show, the three of us rotate the DJ role. You did it last week. You came hard with some awesome tunes.
Let's go.
It's my turn tomorrow.
Yes.
And I already know what the theme is going to be.
Okay.
And I think it's going to tug at your heartstrings because I know that you, like me, have a soft spot for a certain era of cartoons.
Okay.
So that's what we're doing tomorrow.
Oh,
that's what we're doing
Okay.
tomorrow.
Okay.
I've got the selections.
All right.
I'll send them to David tomorrow, but
Can't wait to hear this.
it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Lenny on our text line reacting to a clip we played from Robert Saleh says, "Little butt kissing there, Robert." Well, Lenny, what do you expect Robert Saleh to do? Like, man, I didn't really want this job. They gave me so much money, I couldn't say no. So I'm here, and whatever. Great, but no, I understand.
I mean, it's a part of the process.
Yes,
You
got to kiss a little butt. You got to do
to
it.
move on up.
Yes, you got to kiss a little butt. That
It didn't rhyme, I know,
No.
but I just kind of threw
that
that in there.
surely won't be clipped and played on this station. I mean, I've said more embarrassing things on the air than that. So I've said more.
I just realized, like, oh wow, yeah, that didn't come out.
I've said more embarrassing things on the air than that.
I
But
did not prescribe to that. Not one bit.
speaking of embarrassing things, Bill Belichick isn't a first ballot Hall of Famer. Some of you may not think that's embarrassing. A lot of people seem to think that's embarrassing. Derek Mason made his point loud and clear yesterday that Bill Belichick is getting what's coming to him for cheating.
Yeah.
But we've been waiting for an explanation from the voters who did not put Bill Belichick on their ballots. And we actually did hear from one yesterday. Vahe Gregorian is a columnist for the Kansas City Star. And he wrote a column explaining why he didn't vote for Bill Belichick to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And as he explained, it had nothing to do with Spygate or Deflategate or any other controversy. He simply gave his votes to the senior candidates who may not get another opportunity to make it into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. His argument was Bill Belichick is going to get into the Hall of Fame. It is inevitable, whether it happens this year, next year, the year after that. But Gregorian wanted to make sure that he cast his votes for players who may not have another opportunity to get in. So that was his explanation. Your reaction, I will pull up his column and read from a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, one, this guy felt, I guess in his own sort of world, the pressure of people wanting to know names, and he came out and, hey, listen, this is why I, didn't vote for them. It had nothing to do with, what went on, to cheat the game, on the field. It had more to do with the guys that, are on the panel, and, this may be their last chance to get in. So whether I would rather do that than vote for a guy that I know will get in. These guys may not have a chance. So I am going to put my vote behind these guys because I want these guys to get in. And that's cool. And again, I just don't understand why people can't rationalize that. Okay, he didn't get in the first year. So what? But he's going to get in next year. He's going to get in next year. And if he don't get in next year, he will get in. He will get in eventually. You know how many guys have waited to get in the Hall of Fame, and some still aren't there, and some finally just made it. So excuse me to think that maybe, waiting 1 year, possibly two, isn't such a big thing when guys that should have been categorically Hall of Famers are either not in. Jimmy Smith, Henry Elliotte, or guys that takes a couple of years. Terrell Owens, guys like that, So just because he has to wait a year or two, then it's fine, man. I don't see anything. He shouldn't have disrespected the game the way he did.
So Vahe Gregorian, columnist for the Kansas City Star, who did not vote for Bill Belichick, said he voted for the 3 senior candidates, Ken Anderson, Roger Craig, and L.C. Greenwood. Here is part of what Gregorian wrote at the Kansas City Star. Quote, each of those men, in my opinion, unequivocally belongs in Canton, among dozens of at least semi-similarly decorated players who have been relegated to what Pro Football Hall of Fame voters have come to call the abyss of senior candidates. Despite 10 senior players, along with 3 contributors and 2 coaches, being inducted in 2020 as part of the NFL 100 celebration, the senior backlog remains so overwhelming, including approximately 60 one-time all-decade players, that any chance to climb out is fleeting and fraught. He continues, all of that went into why I felt duty-bound to vote for the richly deserving seniors who most likely won't ever have a hearing again as more senior candidates enter the pool and fresh cases get made for others. Meanwhile, Belichick is inevitable soon, as he should be. At the risk of contradicting my own vote, really, he shouldn't even have to wait. I understand why people are offended that he isn't going in the first moment he can. In the end, though, I feel more compelled, but what I perceive to be last chances and looming lost causes within the system as we have it, a system I hope the Hall will see fit to change now.
Don't people, because in particular, like, let's just say Roger Craig, because I didn't see L.C. Greenwood play, but I did watch Roger Craig play. Roger Craig was one of the first sort of dual back running backs out there, 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000-yard receiving. The way that San Francisco offense flowed, he had a key part in them winning Super Bowls, along with obviously Jerry Rice, Joe Montana, John Taylor, those people. But Roger Craig, what he was able to do, that's another guy should have been in a long time ago. But, they had to wait, and hopefully they will get in. But to sit here and be in an uproar because Bill Belichick has to wait a year, maybe 2, you're missing a point. Like, he cheated inside the game. Again, I'm gonna say it for you again. He cheated inside the game, and there's no way you can try to wiggle yourself out of it. Like, no, he cheated inside of the game, and they don't know how far it went back. Because why? Because they destroyed everything. So if he has to wait a year or 2, it's just like, what? How does that change your life? It'll change Bill's life, but how does that change your life when you're sitting up here in the uproar? Because he has to. It's not like they're saying you're never going to get in. They're just saying, hey, you may have to wait a year or 2.
A couple of texters. Craig says, that's how a Hall of Fame gets watered down. What if everyone thought, oh, I'm not going to vote for them because they'll get in eventually? You should vote for the most deserving, point blank, period. One texter says, Vince Lombardi was not a first ballot Hall of Famer. He won 5 NFL championships without Tom Brady. Another texter says, everybody is boo-hoo about Belichick not getting into the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. Where is all the uproar and everything about Ed Too Tall Jones still not being in the Hall of Fame?
See, stuff like that. We can go down a list of guys that put in the work that were exceptional players. Because I don't want to hear this, oh, the Hall of Fame is not the Hall of Good. Yeah, it is, because there are some people that are in there that are just good. Okay, there are. But they were put in there, why? For a reason. Whatever reason they chose to put them in there, they put them in there. So to say that some of the people that are on this list, they may have this their last chance, to say, well, that's the reason why the Hall is no, that ain't the reason. This didn't start just the last couple of years where there's been this discrepancy. It's just now it's more so on the forefront now. Now it's a part of sports, because the Hall of Fame, it wasn't really a part of sports like that years ago, talking about it and made these compare. It wasn't until sort of this social media explosion where everything became more accessible and attainable and everything else. And now the voting has become this huge, which it should be, but the voting has become this huge thing now. And if a guy don't get in, it's like, oh my goodness, why you, or if a guy you do get in, what, he doesn't deserve to be in. It's like, what do you mean? We can argue about a few things like stat wise and say, their stats look different than others. But if a guy played X amount of years, they put in work, not just from a stat standpoint, but mentally and physically, and to say, and they're on it's like teetering whether they're a Hall of Famer or not, to say they don't deserve it, it's like, man, do you know how much work they put in? And they put in damn good work. Guys like Jimmy Smith, guys like Henry Yeller, guys like not Isaac Bruce, because Isaac Bruce is already in.
Torrey Holt.
I think Torrey may be in, or he's a finalist. But guys like Torrey Holt, where Andre Johnson got in right away, and Torrey Holt still had to wait.
Torrey Holt is not a Hall of Famer.
And Torrey Holt, and not to say that Dre doesn't deserve to be in, because he did. But Torrey Holt retired before Dre, and Torrey Holt has the numbers. I can go and get the numbers and recite them for you. But he's still not in, but no one's making an uproar about that.
That'll do it for us today. Predators take on the Devils tonight. Puck drop at 6. Pregame coming up in just a few moments. The Predators have lost 4 of 5. They will look to end that funk tonight against the Devils. We will be back tomorrow, full show tomorrow at 3 p.m. Stay safe, stay warm, be neighborly. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 3.
Be loved, love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, and wonderful day. I love you. The team love you. You hear that music? Don't you forget about us, because we will definitely not forget about you. Back to our main hours, 3 to 6 tomorrow, because Adam will be bringing the funk. I know he will with the music. So peace, and I love you.